Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, they always say it takes a village to make a film, and it's funny, the more and more I watch them, the more and more I realize how much music plays such a vital role in taking something to levels that we couldn't even have possibly imagined beforehand. And you know what? If you're within the sound of my voice, guess what? You must be in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. You can subscribe to the podcast. Hit that like button, give us the 5-star rating, and subscribe basically wherever you get your podcasts. We're available over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. It's pretty much all good, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram at, well, you guessed it, we're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and watch it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one. We're diving back into the world of Pearl, which is in theaters now, and we are talking with the composers of the soundtrack, Mr. Tyler Bates and Mr. Timothy Williams. And we talked a little bit about just sort of the nature of not just being a composer, but sort of the importance of the job and how they can get inspired and elevate and really add so many different layers, either by the use of music or knowing when not to use music. It's such a complex art form, and when you watch Pearl, you can tell that the music has so many layers to it, either being inspired by an old MGM or Warner Brothers movie from the 30s, or just really sort of dives into the horror motif a little bit more. It is a fantastic piece of film score work, which I cannot recommend enough, and it definitely elevates Pearl to a really different level. And you know, we've been saying this a lot, but if you haven't already seen Pearl, it is still in theaters. Do go check it out. But first, enjoy our talk with these fantastic composers, Mr. Tyler Bates and Mr. Timothy Williams, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one. Now, I mean, obviously, first off, just congrats on the score, man. I mean, honestly, it's a hell of a piece of work. I mean, I guess, Tyler, my first question would be for you, because you did X, but I mean, was this sort of a natural progression? Like, did Ty come back to you immediately when Pearl got greenlit? Like, what's the story there?
Yeah, and it was greenlit right, I would say a couple months into us working on X together. Chelsea Wolf and I were working together on that. By the time Pearl was ready for a score, Ty discussed it with me and mentioned that A24 wanted it to be ready ASAP so that it could be released within the same year. And the time frame they had was nearly impossible. So, you know, I had suggested to him that Tim and I work on it together. And this wasn't the first he heard of Tim, because Tim and I have done a lot of projects together in some capacity, worked together on a million things. So he was perfectly amenable and excited about that. And Ty met Tim, and boom, we're off to the races. But it was literally a score that needed to happen within a few weeks in order for us to make it in time for Pearl to come out recently as it did.
And that's wild, just because, I mean, it's such a layered and complex movie. I mean, really, you've got to capture sort of on one end the essence of like in the classic Technicolor Hollywood, a little bit of Douglas Sirk, but still have sort of that Lynchian undertone to it. I mean, what did you guys look to when you're trying to craft the sound for this film?
Tim?
Yeah, so obviously we're looking back at the golden age of Hollywood in terms of the scores. You've got incredible incredible work by Max Steiner and Bernard Herrmann and John Barry. The list goes on, and also referencing even the Judy Garland films. So there was a lot there to absorb in terms of the syntax and language of those types of films. It's a syntax and it's orchestral colors that really haven't been used for 60 plus years. So just trying to get that as the syntax, is certainly challenging. But at a certain point, we just kind of had to go for it and really view it as what we normally do, which is score a film, try and capture help tell the story, capture the emotions of the characters, the dreams that the characters have, and tell that through music. And that was our primary goal, while limiting ourselves to the syntax, the language of that particular time. So it was definitely challenging, though.
No, I mean, obviously you guys are on a crunch on this, but you go full orchestra. Like, was that just sort of a decision-based creative decision, or did you want to challenge yourselves even further?
Yeah, it was definitely a creative choice. It was Ty very much wanted the look and the feel of the film to feel absolutely drenched, in that kind of 1940s Technicolor feel from beginning to end. And, I said to Tyler, are you sure about this? So we did, that opening main theme as kind of a proof of concept. Like, okay, we're really going to go down this road. We got to commit to it. And, once we got that opening main theme and sent it to Ty, and he loved it. He was just like, yeah, this is totally it. Keep going. Then we felt, okay, we're off to the races. We've got the tone of this film. We understanding what it should be. And, we just kind of made that sort of pact not to use anything contemporary and just really be true to that approach.
Yeah, I don't think the authenticity of the film would have come across as naturally as it does right now had we not had access to an orchestra. And I have to hand it to A24. I mean, this is an indie film, and they ended up coffering up some additional resources for us to record a live orchestra. And we did it here in the States in Nashville for multiple reasons, especially because the time constraints and all the COVID stuff. But we certainly appreciate the players there for digging in and really working hard to help us get this right, because it's the style of the score is not typically what probably comes across their music stands. And this is a throwback to another era. And some of the phrases, the statements, some of the sonority of the instruments has to be approached differently than you would in a contemporary score. Even if there are woodwinds in a contemporary score, their phrasing is usually a different context than it is in this. So we were fortunate enough to have that kind of support, and it was like the little engine that could. So we're really proud of it because it's such a good movie.
Now, I mean, I'm curious for both your perspectives on this, because I mean, just as sort of an outsider, on the outside looking in, it feels like the job of the composer on one end can be like, you can be there from day one and be very involved and have time, or on the other end of the spectrum, it can be, you can have 6 weeks, do it. How does that sort of add to the layer of the work that you guys have to do? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you're artists, you're creative people. You can't necessarily turn it on and off. I mean, how do you have stuff ready when a situation like this comes up?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and actually one that gets asked a lot. I think one of the things that's really important is that sense of like a daily schedule, just where, whether you sit in front of the computer and get nothing done, or you sit in front of the computer and write 5 minutes of music, you have to sit in front of the computer. And some days you'll write stuff that you're really proud of, and other days you'll write stuff that ends up in the garbage. But I think it's that thing of, you got to write something, and that maybe the first draft is going to be terrible, but then at least you've got something written, and you come back and you hone it, and eventually get to the point where you go, oh, I see what this needs to be, and that that kind of inspiration will strike. But it has to be within that framework of sitting down every day and doing it, and I think that's the idea, that you're sitting there writing nothing and waiting for inspiration to hit is not the reality, especially when you're under a time crunch. You've got to write something and then adjust it later. But I think that's the way a lot of people work and get through schedules, because just by doing it, you're ultimately going to build up those muscles, to get it done.
The director, Ty West, has a lot to do with how that process goes as well. Writer, director, editor. He's very talented in all facets of his craft. And not only does he give excellent information, but he also is trying to help us succeed in our task, not trying to kick us until we appease him. So the fact that he is right there with you on your team, trying to help you succeed in the appropriate way to support the film musically, very much expedites a lot of the sideways thinking that a composer may go through if a director is not giving them strong input about what the objective is musically, what the syntax is musically, any sort of conversation that can help inspire and inform us about his sensibilities. There are 1,000 ways to do each film we ever watch, or more, but I think him being so articulate in what he relates to has helped, me and my experience with Ty now on 3 movies. This is about storytelling and emotion. And so our greatest job as composers is to first understand the sensibilities of our primary collaborators, and in this case being Ty, because the buck basically stopped with him. The studio supported his vision for this movie, and the conversation was really between the 3 of us the whole way. So when you're working in that capacity, you know that if I commit to this, it's not like there's going to be a shoe dropping in 3 weeks and all of a sudden this whole body of work is going to change or be tossed. So it does help. And then you can just really get into the beauty of this type of writing and enjoy the work as you go. Because the movie it's so fun. Just because I would say not only is the material great, Mia Goth is extraordinary in this. The edit is great. So music does, when a film is shot well and it's edited well, music naturally lays into it much easier than if the film is cut around pre-existing music with all these stops and starts and certain chords and whatever. I mean, it depends on the film, I mean, sometimes I've had people email me a 7th chord and tell me that I should put that in the score at this moment so the joke is funnier. So I mean, there's a way of approaching this where you're trying your aspiration is to create something classic. Like, I do believe Pearl will be a movie we can watch in 10 years, 20 years, and it's going to hold up because of the approach to every facet of the film. So that's exciting for us. I mean, we're grateful for every opportunity to work, to be creative as professionals, but in this particular instance, it's like kind of being on an island and having a great opportunity to do that and build camaraderie. I mean, Tim and I are super close friends for a long time. We've been through many extraordinary experiences together, good, bad, and otherwise. And I think that's, having that relationship going into a project like this definitely instills confidence in the director, and his confidence in us, rather. So I would say those are all factors that have contributed to what the final product is in a very significant way.
Well, and I mean, I agree with you on that. And it's one of those things where in watching the film for the first time, I was so struck just by how the score never got in the way. Sometimes music can get in the way of the film, and here that never happened. I mean, for you guys, how do you sort of know where the line is to not get in the way of what's going on, be it with a performance or something that's happening visually?
Yeah, I think that comes down to as best as we can, really sort of understanding the purpose of music in a film. And there are a lot of directors it's just there for wallpaper. And for other directors like Ty, music is there for a purpose. It's there. There are places where the music needs to shine. The opening shots when you go in, you just the music there takes you in, and then there's other places where it needs to sit further back, and that's we use our instincts in terms of where do we come to the fore, where should we push in, where do we want it to really truly be underscoring, where it's just supporting but not getting in the way. So we have our own instincts, but there are definitely times where Ty give us a note saying, hey, can we go further with this, can we really push this moment further, and obviously places where he said, I think we're hitting this too hard, can we lay back a bit there. So it's just definitely a testament to Ty's sensibilities, and even down to the mix, where the mixing team did such a great job, but they were pulling out sound effects that they felt those crickets are interfering with the strings, and this for some reason is just making this soundtrack feel. So he was incredibly conscious during the mix of how sound effects were impacting the score and vice versa. And again, that's a skill. That's definitely something that not every director will pay attention to that. So when I watched the film, I was really blown away by the mix. I was like, man, I can even hear the single clarinet, low clarinet here. I can hear that, and that helps. As a composer, if your score's clear and you can hear it, that helps with that whole process.
I'm curious for both of you guys, and specifically you, Tyler, because I'm a big fan of the work you did on like the John Wick films. But if you put this beside that, they're two stylistically very different things. Is the joy of a job like this being able to pivot stylistically to do different things?
Well, that's the joy of the career. So anytime if you're going to express a score in a given style, I think you need to be cultured in the music. I don't think that it's fair to the movie or the show or the score, the audience, to pick up a Radiohead album and listen to 20 seconds of 5 songs and then think Radiohead, and then you're going to apply that syntax to something. But that's a reality. Okay, that's a reality in the business. If sometimes people are so insular and their intake is, and we write all the time. So it's not like we have a radio in the background or we're constantly listening to tunes, but you have to, I come from just listening to so much music of all styles, whether it's rock, jazz, blues, classical music. It's impacted the way I think altogether, whether the score is rock leaning like a John Wick or some other action movie we've done, or something like Pearl, or something like Watchmen, which spans the whole spectrum of styles. So I think that's one of the greatest things about the opportunity to write music to stories for a living, whether it's movies, games, television, and like a lot of the work I do with recording artists and making records, writing songs with them. You learn every day of your life. And I'm excited by that. I find that to be empowering as a person, to constantly open myself to learning. And I learn from everybody around me. It doesn't matter what age they are, how long they've been doing this or that. I like to pay attention to everything that people are doing and how they do it, and see how I can grow from that experience. And I think that Tim and I bear similarities where we complement each other, but we have very distinctively different backgrounds that also bring a lot of interesting color to our collaborations, our conversations, our friendship. It's been really a tremendous 20 years that he and I have been friends and worked together much of that time. So that's all part of the joy of it. I could be dead today, right? So I think a lot about what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. And the people in my orbit are really fantastic people. We learn together. Tim and I have made mistakes. We learn from them. We're like, that sounded pretty, blocky there. That was not the greatest way of approaching that. But, we learn from it, and we circle back around and make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes. That's cool. That makes you a stronger artist and a stronger person in life, is to be open to to those type of experiences and to learn from working with your friends and collaborators that are just incredibly talented to their own right. So that's, that's my short, long-winded answer.
Love it. Now, I mean, just to put a bow on this for you guys, I mean, this is a silly question, but it's one I always like to ask because we tend to easily forget how important the music and the image have to be married with one another to really make a great sort of cinematic moment. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, and Tim, we'll start with you on this. Was there something that you saw or heard even back in your younger days where you kind of understood, where you had that sort of light bulb moment and you understood the marriage of the two that made you want to get into this business?
Yeah, I know exactly when that moment was for me. It was when I was in London, and they have this gorgeous theater in Leicester Square, and I went to see The Mission.
Oh, wow.
I think I was sort of skiving off work, and I think I called in sick or something like that. I went to this movie theater, and it was The Mission, and there was no one else in the theater. I think it was like a 2,000 seat theater, and I sat like right in the middle of the theater with this incredible view, this incredible film with one of the best scores by Morricone I've ever heard in my life. And it, the film has these two colors. One is this very classical, music, and then one is very sort of this wonderful ethnic tribal drumming. And the way they'd mixed it in 5/1, with the movie starts with all the classical music up front and all the tribal drumming in the back, and then throughout the course of the film they switch perspectives, and the drumming ends up in the front, and the sort of the classical European stuff is in the back. And I mean, that was a transcendental moment for me, where I just thought, this is the thought process that's gone into the score, the combination of the ideas here representing the Europeans coming, and then this incredible ethnic drumming. And I just thought that was the moment for me where I just said, this is what I want to do for a living. It was a life-changing moment where I just saw the power of music against that film. It was so profound.
Love it. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I sort of gradually fell into film scoring. I was writing music with artists and producing, songs, records. And I would meet people here in Los Angeles who had no money for their score and they needed one. So they would ask me to do the music, and I was very upfront. I was always writing, always performing, rehearsing, recording, producing the whole thing. But I had not, obviously before my first movie, I had never done one. And I never met another composer, as I've said, till I'd completed 18 movies. So I was learning from directors and producers, editors, music editors, re-recording mixers, who were gracious enough to share their insights with me. And some really good people like Jerry Greenberg, who did Get Carter. He also did Apocalypse Now, I believe. But, these were my mentors, really. And I really then became fascinated with how much a part of the storytelling music is in this medium. It's completely different when it's not accompanied by that visual and storytelling element. But then before I knew it, I came to understand that the dialogue is actually my singer in this movie. You know what I mean? And I would write appropriately for that because I'd always written for all of the singers that I've worked with in my life. And there was a correlation there. And I really loved how much every experience with a director and or editor producer expanded the scope of my thinking about music and its purpose. And that's relatable across all aspects of creating music. So for me, that was empowering and exciting and fascinating. And, one thing about working with Ty West, he may give us a menu of where we're having dinner, but, we can really cook up create our recipe, whereas sometimes there are two hands on your hand by the time you begin working on a movie. So it's really, this is a numbers game, Tim's love, my love, passion for music and doing what we do is a numbers game. They're not all going to be to offer the same creative freedom or support, But over time, you end up with a few that are just like, wow, that was really such an amazing, rewarding experience, especially when you see how much the music is actually valued. That it's not just a cool widget or wallpaper that kind of thumps in the background, but what it is in this story, especially like 300, it's a character in the movie, and it feels really great to be valued not only as people and creators, but to have the music valued in that capacity in a movie. And the mix of this movie supports that idea as well. It is absolutely one of the best music mixes of any movie I've ever been involved in. And when you have the opportunity to see something in a theater perform the way it does as an audience, to the audience, I'm talking about the movie as a whole, not just music.
Yeah.
It really inspires you to want to get back at it and do more and seek out more of those type opportunities. And that's really where I'm at right now.
Well, guys, I can't wait for you both to get back at it, because I mean, this is a hell of a piece of work, and I mean, it is such it gives the work that Ty and Mia have done here such a great lift. And it's, again, it's like you said, Tyler, like Pearl is going to be one of those movies that it's not going to be forgotten. People are still going to be talking about it years from now. And I mean, I think you guys played a big part in that. And just, again, thank you for the work, and thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much, David.
Thanks for having us.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.